All right. Well, thank you, Kent, for participating once more for our Break Fast and Launch program. Just always excited to have you. Always excited to see your business, be a part of it. I've told everybody as much as I can that my favorite place in San Antonio is the Dakota. That's not, I know a lot of people say that they're going to give me a six pack after I introduce them, but I truly do mean that. No six pack, no reciprocation required. Yeah, it's just one of my favorite places. Like really espouses what I think San Antonio is about. It's a great community place. And really hasn't been open forever. It's only been open for, is this the third year?
Yeah, we're about to have our third anniversary in 3 weeks.
Yeah, about to have third anniversary in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So again, exciting. And Kent, it's not like he was always in the bar. Don't know if he had many experiences being a business owner previously or not, but has learned a lot of stuff on the fly and is just constantly trying to be ahead of the curve. And one of the things that I think that he has done amazingly has been to build a community around his business. And so I guess I'll just go ahead and start with that as just my primary introduction for you, Kent. But yeah, I guess we could go ahead and get started. And, I'd love to just kind of have your, the initially your introduction, but then also we can kind of just jump right into where you started and how you got to be here.
Okay, we can do that. And you're absolutely correct. I was not in this business before and had never owned a business before. And it's been a super eye-opening experience. Had I probably known everything, I don't know I would have done exactly what I did, but you don't ever know. I mean, that's like you kind of jump blindly into things, and I mean, you probably shouldn't jump blindly into things, but that was my experience. And luckily, didn't free fall forever, but have been in various stages of free fall throughout the last 3 years, including this past year where everybody was in free fall. So that was a whole nother thing on top of just trying to, like you said, open a business and build a community, and just with limited experience. I had experience in people and managing people. That was what I did before. I for 20 years worked with the boat concession on the river. Worked my way up through that company. The last 5 years, I was the director of operations. Like I said, it was a city contract, and I figured out at the once we did not get that contract that I had no interest in working for the new company coming on board, as they were it was Landry's, and so it was just a big, I'd always worked for mom and pop type businesses, and just to be kind of a faceless, nameless person, and it was just not really something I was interested in. So I had to kind of scramble because my skill set was somewhat specific. Yeah, other than the managing people thing, everything else was pretty specific. And so I saw kind of a need for some sort of community type space in my neighborhood. I live 2 blocks from the Dakota. I've been here in the neighborhood for about 12 years. And so I knew that we didn't have a place to meet neighbors or just a place to hang out. And ever since the very first time I ever went to La Tuna 25 years ago, I always thought that was just kind of an awesome concept. And any of y'all that have been there, now it's a little different than it used to be. But 20 years ago, you would see people from all walks of life, all different types of people, and it was just really kind of a cool experience just to see everyone, getting along together, which I think is something that's kind of uniquely San Antonio in our ability to, kind of do that. Be able to get to everybody get along, even though you may come from different backgrounds. My neighborhood here on the east side is currently in the middle of a huge gentrification, which is a very difficult thing to navigate for people who live in the neighborhood and people who are coming to the neighborhood and people, um, just people all around. You know, there's no easy answer to any of that, or how that should be done. But my thing moving forward and having a business was always just to try and respect what was here, acknowledge what was here and who was here, and move forward in that manner.
I dig it. So Kent, thinking about your journey, you talked about not really knowing, or rather, having seen bars, but not exactly knowing the ins and outs of bars. So I guess, how did you start? Like, even with the location that you're in, was it you just kind of was like, hey, that place looks like could be a bar, and
Well,
I'm
so
gonna
on
buy stuff and make a bar?
well, so on actually the property that adjoins the Dakota is a tiny little ice house that was originally an ice house in the teens, where you actually went and physically got your big block of ice to take home and put in your ice box. And it's a building, like I said, it's 2 or 3 blocks from my house, and I've always loved that building. So I'd always thought, man, that would be, if I ever got a chance to do something like Latuna, that would be my little ice house. Unfortunately, it was not available, and it required a whole lot of work to be done to it. Um, so actually, right after I mentioned earlier that we met with the new company that was taking over the boats, the day I decided that I was not going to accept my position with them again, I was driving home and they had just asphalted the parking lot here at the Dakota, and I was like, man, that looks really great. And so I went around the block just to check it out again, and it was for lease, and I had not really looked at it before, and I was like, huh, maybe maybe that could be the ice house. And so I literally called the number and scheduled to look at the building the next day. Mind you, I had no money, I had no plan, I had nothing except for just this idea that was just that day. Um, and then I thought about it all night, and I came over the next day and looked at the building and talked to the property owner, and just kind of told him. I mean, at that point, I didn't really have a vision. I just had an idea. Um, just told him, kind of my idea. And they had been approached by other people to open different things here, tattoo parlors and all sorts of stuff, which they didn't really think was what needed to be in the neighborhood. Um, and so they were interested in what I had to say, but they were going to continue to show the building. And I said, well, just give me some time to try and get stuff together. Of course, I didn't tell them I didn't have any money or experience in anything, uh, but luckily they just told me, okay, well, if we have anybody that's interested, we'll let you know, and you can have like first dibs if somebody else becomes interested. And luckily nobody did. um, in those next weeks, the next about 4 weeks, um, I just basically saved every cent I had, didn't pay my mortgage, did everything I could to get together enough money to form my LLC and open a bank account and have enough money to pay for the to get the lease on the building. And so then I had a building. I had a building, and I still had no experience and no money and no uh, anything really. But I did have a vision by that point, because I started getting really excited about it. And I, like I said, living here in the neighborhood, I knew, at least I thought I knew what I thought people wanted or what people needed to have to bring us kind of together. Because, like I said, with the gentrification going on, we're getting new neighbors, we're losing old neighbors, and it's the number one topic that we all talk about here nearly every day, is just kind of what's going on. And so I knew that would be it'd be important. I mean, everybody walking on eggshells. I always say if people would just talk to each other, it would solve a lot more problems. So um, anyway, that was kind of my vision, was just kind of create a space where people could do that. So I knew that I would be able to cash out my 401k when I ended my old job. So that's what everything kind of hinged on, was cashing out on that to start the business. Um, so I just kind of moved forward blindly, started making plans on what I was going to do, and um, I secured my license, my TABC license first, because there are schools nearby, but they're luckily about 25 feet outside the radius they need to be. So, we had to send out letters, we had to do all that stuff. Just I didn't want to spend a single cent on the building until I knew for sure that that was going to be able to be something we could do.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So as you moved into the process where you were actually, now it was sort of a confirmed thing, and you were, getting ready to figure out really how to do this, what things do you feel like you did right, and what do you feel like you did wrong? I mean, I remember, and I always recount this back to myself. I think if it was 3 years ago, more or less to this point, I remember it was right in the middle of the Final Four, and I walked by and saw a building, and I was like, "Hey, I know one of the guys that's there." And then that was the first time I'd ever run into you directly, Ken,
Mhm.
and really inspired to see, you had really great bar that you were, building out. Everything looked just really polished. But I'm sure at the time, maybe you were like, I don't know if this is polished at all. You're probably fretting, but yeah, I just would love to kind of get your thoughts on maybe the start and then the evolution.
I mean, I think the most important thing, and that's what I tell anybody that I talk to that's trying to start a business, is to not be afraid to ask people for help or ask people questions. That was something that initially I wasn't great at, but I've become really good at now because there are, you always hear there's no stupid questions, and that's definitely true. You can save yourself time and money and everything else just by asking people who are in the business and can steer you, um, in the right direction. It's negotiating with all the city entities and the one stop and permitting and all that stuff it's ridiculous, and you basically don't get any answers except for the questions that you come with, and then there's no help going forward on any on any other questions you may have after that. You just have to figure out what's next and then go back to them. So I'd say definitely is just asking people, finding people and ask them questions. I mean, even people I didn't know, I would go and just say, hey, I'm doing whatever. Do you have any input on this? And so, it was embarrassing at first, but like anything else, the more and more you do it, the easier it gets. And then you're just kind of comfortable with it. And I mean, a lot of people are, I mean, nearly every business owner that I've approached in the last 3 years is excited to talk about their business and also excited to help other people with their business. Um, and so many of those people have also been involved with launch as well. And that's, I mean, it's just kind of if you're here right now, you're in the middle of a good community of people that will help you, and will be excited about other people who are coming into the business world. So I mean, I think that's just something to always keep in the back of your mind is there's no stupid question, and ask everybody, because they may give you some insight and some inspiration and some ideas that you uh, never would have thought of on your own, or wouldn't have come to as quickly as somebody who has a little bit of experience. Um, so that's what the biggest thing I've learned is that, and I've learned a lot of what not to do as well. Although I probably wouldn't have done it differently. When we've done this before, Ryan, I've told you about some of the bad choices in lending I've done, which um, somehow I got through, but they almost sunk the ship a couple of times. So I would also just kind of say exercise caution in what you do to secure a little bit of money. If you're in in a pinch, which is really easy to get into because there's that first year we had double the money going out that we had coming in, um, and that's the other thing too. It's just everything is going to cost so much more than you ever expected to.
So as you talk about things that cost you more money than you thought it would, do you have any recollection of, just kind of some of the things you were expecting to not be so expensive, or even maybe some of the things that you totally didn't even think about as
um,
you were starting?
yeah, sure. I mean, you need to take into account taxes. Taxes are a huge thing. Insurance is a huge thing. Just general operating expenses together are a huge thing. Um, it's really easy to me, or at least for me, it was very easy to underestimate all of that. Um, I feel like I'm paying taxes like every other day for something. But it's that was really kind of crazy to me. All that, everything. I mean, for this type of business, especially, you have the linen company that has to bring you all that stuff, and security and pest control, and just so many, the chemical company that supplies you with all your soap and your dishwashing things and all that stuff. There's just so many little things that cost a lot. And I mean, equipment is expensive. um, I've never bought any brand new equipment, but I've seen what it costs. So that's I mean, it's amazing. It's just amazing how much things cost. It's just across the board. And that's something that we've done too. We've done lots of repurposing and reusing and getting things from other places, and just we never had that luxury of having a blank check to just write for anything. And I'm sure that so many people that are here today are in that same position. It's really hard to to just kind of scrap everything together. I always kind of feel like we were building a big clubhouse, just trying to find things in the neighborhood and build build up something that looked worth coming to. Um, but like I said, this it was it, I don't know. It's just those are the things that I would say are probably the bit most surprising to me. It's just the amount of things that you just when you have your initial vision, you don't the little minutia kind of um, seems so far away that you don't realize it until you're in the middle of it, and then you're like, man, this money is going fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all, I guess, the things that we hope to account for, but maybe you said it right in the
Right,
minutia. You definitely you don't think soap is going to be much of a consideration until it is a consideration, right? So
right, right. Everything. I
um
mean, every single thing. And then with COVID, now everything is on paper and plastic to go, and you just don't realize how fast it goes and how much you have to spend on those sort of things. It's I mean that's been a big eye opener with COVID, is just taking on all the disposable type stuff.
absolutely. And I think if we can think back to, call it, the normal operating environment, excuse me, um if we think back to that normal operating environment, which hopefully one day will return, um, there were so many things that you started with that you've eventually either changed or edited to fit what you saw was happening within the bar and in the community. So I'm wondering, can you think about the, as things were kind of fully going. I know your bar offers food. I think that your food is like some of the best stuff you could find at any bar in town. I mean, honestly, it might be my favorite bar food that I've had in town. So, um, you didn't have a full kitchen. I don't even know if you wanted to do food, if you just thought, hey, I guess I have to have it. But I guess what kind of mistakes were in there? I know initially you started without really any emphasis on music. Now you have music almost 7 days a week practically. At one point you were only open till I can't remember if it was 11 or maybe it was midnight or 10. But there are so many little changes in there that ended up manifesting into long-term changes. So, I guess what was the initial perception of what was going to work? And then how did you realize, oh, you know what, this needs to change?
So food, that was the first change, because initially I didn't plan on having any food. But the way the property's zoned and that sort of thing, and to get the type of food and beverage license I wanted, I had to have food. But of course there's requirements with that. You think, oh, that's easy, we'll sell something easy, and then you realize that you have to have at least 10 items. You start getting into all these rules that the like TABC has and things like that. And so you had to have 10 items with sides. You had to have, just all this basic stuff for that. So then we went so I decided I was going to roll with it and just like, okay, whatever. So we decided that, yes, we were going to have a kitchen. Of course, the space did not have a kitchen. And like I mentioned earlier, how expensive equipment is. So I basically went and talked to the fire department, the fire marshal people at the One Stop, and just said, what requires a vent hood and what can I get away with that doesn't require ventilation, so I can move forward with hot food, because to be considered a restaurant, the food has to be hot, it has to be prepared on site. It can't just be it has to be like legit, you have to be making it there. So that's where the restaurant ball started rolling, and just kept rolling. And so I found out, what type of equipment we had to have that we could use without having to have ventilation system, and fire suppression and all those other things that come along with that. So that our means of preparation actually dictated our menu rather than vice versa, which I think is probably not how that usually works. So what we had was a small conveyor oven, small tabletop conveyor oven, and that was our main means of preparing, not preparing food, but heating the food. So then we just had to figure out what we were going to do through there. So literally, we did not come up with our menu completely until the weekend before we opened on Monday. Like, we had talked about it. The guy that helped me finish out the building, he had his stuff to throw in about what he thought, and we went back and forth. And on that Friday, we went and bought all the ingredients and things that we thought we were going to use. And on Saturday, we put everything together, and on Sunday, we prepared everything a few times, and then we opened on Monday. And so really had no clue what we were doing. And that was during Final Four. That Monday we opened up was the last day of Final Four, on Monday the 2nd, which is actually next week. Anyway, so our first customer, a week before, we, for a couple of months, I'd had a sign upside that, we were coming soon. And Paul Steven from the Express News had called me and just asked me, about what we were opening, what was going on. And he said, well, whenever you get ready to open, let me know. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'd never dealt with anyone like that before. So that Sunday before we opened, it was like the third day in a row that we'd say, okay, we're going to open tomorrow. We're going to open tomorrow. And then we wouldn't open. So that Sunday, I sent out all the Facebook announcements that we were opening. And I called Paul Steven and said, we're opening tomorrow. And went back and told everybody that was working inside that we were opening the next day. And they were like, yeah, well, hopefully we'll be able to open tomorrow. And I was like, no, we're opening tomorrow. I just made it official. I can't rescind that. So we finally got open about 3 o'clock on Monday. We had no air conditioning. Um, the air conditioning guy was literally hanging out of the ceiling when we opened, and it was about 80 degrees inside. And our very first customer was Paul Steven, and he was doing a food article, and he came in and ordered one of everything basically, and ate the food and thought it was good, and literally 3 hours later put out his article on mysa.com, and that was a blessing and a curse because we immediately had expectations of what people were gonna get when they came. Um, so needless to say, the next week was very very interesting. Just on in because we hadn't figured out anything. I mean, we had barely it was just it was crazy. Like looking back on it now, I don't know how that even happened, but like I said, it was a blessing. It was a blessing for us because it gave us a little boost right there at the beginning. Um, and I think he was just kind of excited. He had seen that that something new was opening up here on the east side because 3 years ago that was even more um, amazing or different than it is now 3 years later because so many more places have opened since then. Um, I just it's just really hard to think how that happened. But during that time, we grew, we figured it out. I finally hired like someone to run the kitchen and got that a little bit more in order. And um, we used the best ingredients we could afford, and we tried to make food that we would eat at home. And luckily, everybody liked those same things, and so we just kept moving forward on that. And as our menu grew and things like that, all we did is just add things that we like to eat, um, and that we enjoyed, and luckily, um, the public liked it as well. And like I said, during that entire time as well, every person that came to the door, I tried to make sure that I let them know, kind of what our purpose was, that we were how focused we were on, trying to maintain the fabric of the community and retain the history of this neighborhood. We have tons of pictures and ephemera and different stuff on the walls from the last 100 years. That's all within about 10 blocks of where this building stands. Um, just really trying to honor everything that was here before. And that's something that a lot of people um, that live in this neighborhood had never seen before. I don't think they'd ever been um, approached in that manner. Um, Anyone who knows the history of this part of town and just how things are treated over here, it's just kind of like the leftovers always got pushed over here all the time. And any complaints fell on deaf ears. And so for someone to come in and actually kind of respectfully try to treat the situation, I think was a different approach and something that people were super receptive to. Um, and I feel so lucky for that. I mean, I'm I'm grateful to everybody we have. I mean, it's really turned into what I had dreamed, in that we have neighbors now that lived a couple blocks from each other for decades that never knew each other, and now they're friends that hang out together all the time. And I think that's just awesome. That's what helps build this community, makes things safer, makes things everything better. Just the getting the people together in between. And I think that as we changed through the years and added different things, whether it was you know staying open a little bit later or adding the music, which the music was a huge game changer for us as well. The very first time that anybody ever played a guitar inside, it was like the whole place came alive and it felt completely different. And I was just amazed at how different it made everything feel. And I'm sure that was the first time an instrument had ever been played in this building, as it was mostly a grocery store for the last 60, 70 years. So I don't think there was a lot of music being played inside prior to the Dakota's existence. Um, so once you feel that, when you feel that magic of the live music, then um, definitely something I wanted to move forward with, and also just the support of musicians. Um, that's a that's such a hard um, thing to do. I mean, it's a hard life to live, just playing gigs and trying to get things together. And I just the same approach I had with the community, I wanted to have with the music community, in being as respectful to them and trying to do right by them as best as I could, um, and kind of form that music community as well, which is something that's really grown for us, and it's been really great, and we've reaped rewards from that as well. So that's been awesome. Um, as far as moving into COVID, which we had I felt like we had finally, in January and February of 2020, we were finally inching towards black, inching towards finally being out of red all the time. Um, and we had music, like you said, almost 7 nights a week. Things were getting really busy. I had 16 employees at that time, um, and then COVID hit, and everything changed. Um, for anyone who's not been here before, our business prior to COVID was mainly inside. Um, we could hold 48 people inside, and we had 5 tables outside that held about four or five people each. So a total of about 60 people we could hold total, um, which would max our kitchen out, and we had some crazy times during that time. Um, COVID, all that changed, of course. We did groceries. We sold groceries, which really was not for us. It was for the neighborhood because I was able to get things through the restaurant supplies and Cisco and that sort of thing. I could get things that people were having problems getting at the grocery stores. We didn't make any money off of it, but we did provide, something for our neighbors where they were able to come here and get a roll of toilet paper if they needed it, or a gallon of milk, or some eggs, or dry rice and beans, or whatever it was. We bagged rice and beans, and all these things that I never ever imagined, more than I didn't imagine being a restaurant owner. I never imagined that I'd be selling groceries. So that was a big game changer uh, for us there. And of course, as things progressed, we opened up a side door. We turned it into a window where we could serve food through the window, so people wouldn't have to come inside, both as a protection for our employees and the public. Um, and then as things developed, we kind of realized that if we were ever going to open again, like everyone knows, we need to have more outdoor space. And luckily, in January before COVID, I had secured the lot behind my building, and we had plans to, open a backyard and have some space back there. Um, so what ended up happening was once I was able to get some PPP money, I hired a few of the musicians who no longer had jobs, and basically they put together that backyard. We didn't have any money really for the expansion we had planned, but there was a bunch of junk back there, and we repurposed every single bit of it we could, um, and built an outdoor area. Um, and then as that progressed, we realized, in the summer we started getting kind of busy before July, and everything kind of went to hell again. And so I had a small parking lot in the front. Um, we closed for 2 weeks in July, and we basically started converting that parking lot into a seating area as well. Um, and so by summer and fall, by the end of summer and fall, things had also had a swing up where we were, doing business again before everything got bad after um, Labor Day. And so, we had all of a sudden had all this space, and trying to figure out what to do with it, and have everything outside because the inside wasn't open anymore. It wasn't even an option. Um, we finally opened inside in December, with limited seating, and that sort of thing. Um, and then just recently, since uh, the freeze, we've finally had everything open outside, everything open inside. And then 3 weeks ago, we had everything open completely. Um, the main difference being is now we can hold almost 200 people. And so it's become a completely different business, and everything's outside. We do have, people inside, but never the amount of people that are outside. So that's changed just, how we operate everything. I mean, we're running circles around this building literally all day long, trying to, get food out of that tiny kitchen and those tiny conveyor ovens as fast as we can.
Well, one of the things, and I always hate to bring this up just because I'm sure it gives you a hard time, but we did have another mentor talk about it in something of a positive sense. So I was hoping maybe you could give the ulterior of the financing issue that you went through. I believe that the other person mentioned Square Capital. I'm not sure if that's what you went through or something different, but if you don't mind talking a little bit about
The
that
small business,
issue.
yeah. So it was a small business. I can't remember if it was like small business capital. It was something like that. And so what the deal was that with that was, and the only reason I agreed to it was, it'll make sense to y'all why I agreed to it in just a second. So what the deal was it was I could get a loan for $15,000. 12, yeah, no, it was $12,000 for $15,000. So I had to repay $15,000. At the time, the ship was sinking fast, and I just needed money fast, and so I agreed to those terms. The terms were more complicated than that, though. It had to be paid back out of your sales daily. So every single day, I paid small business capital about $150. And this is during a time when we were bringing in maybe $300 a day. So, um, yeah, so that's what happened with that. And so I had to pay. It was all. I mean, the reason I agreed to those terms was that for the immediate moment, it got us through our hard time. We did get busier. We did make some more money, but the terms of the agreement were that if your sales slowed down, the whole lending purpose program was built on your sales. If your sales slowed, your payments would go down, and if your business closed, the loan would be forgiven. And so that was the only reason I agreed to it. Because I was like, well, if I lose everything, at least this won't be one more person that I owe money to. And so I agreed to those terms, and it got us through that little spot. But for 6 months, I was paying $150 a day to this company, and it was not a good. I would not advise doing that to anyone. I think there are much better options. But I was just a little desperate, and I was also a little embarrassed because it was so soon after we opened. I mean, that was literally we opened in April, and that was in September. Um, so I was trying to, you know, maybe maintain the facade that everything was great, and it was not. But yeah, that's kind of how that worked out.
Thank you for sharing, folks. If you have questions, I'd love for you to unmute and go ahead and ask at any point. I want to make this more of a conversation. So, does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask up front? Don't be afraid.
Kent,
Yes, sir.
my name is Andrew. I was just curious because I don't know if I missed it. When you first started out and you said you scrounged together money and you got the lease, and then you were still obviously didn't have the funds. What did you do to find the funds just to get open?
Like I said, I used my 401k that I cashed out my entire 401k from my former job. And then my mother had passed recently, and so I sold her house, and was able to get funds that way. Um, I didn't sell her house though until the next year. So those funds that I got from the 401k were basically what I thought I was going to open the whole business on, which was only about $75,000. And that was to completely build out the building and purchase products and hire people. And yeah, it was just totally ridiculous. I thought that was enough money.
Okay, thanks. So you did it pretty much all on your own. So did
Yes.
you go for funding after, like you said, towards like, you know, when you guys started doing your free falls and things like that? Did you ever reach out for, like, for example, the programs they have now, like Lift Fund and stuff like that? Or
So it was really hard in the beginning to do that because I was a new business and I didn't have any, I didn't really have any, built-in, equity in the business. Like there wasn't anything. It was just a guy that's trying to do something. And so I didn't really have any financials or anything that could prove that I could, really do any of that. So other than my poor decisions in lending through that company, I've really just kind of scrounged stuff together here and there is how I've done that.
gotcha. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Kent, question on the first lease that you signed. I'm sure you were a little nervous about that. Can you talk about what the terms were and how that negotiation went?
So the lease I signed is just a very basic lease. I know a little bit more about leases now. I still don't know a whole lot about them. I was really nervous about the length of the lease, which is so ridiculous because now I'm because I asked for a shorter lease than they offered, which now I realize was the stupidest thing ever that I did. But it's to me just the thought of 5 or 6 years. It's like, oh my God, I can't imagine that being. I can't imagine signing my name to being responsible for that amount of money into the future. So yeah, so that would be the thing. Get the longest lease you can get because my lease is going to be up here in within the next year, and I'm like, man, why didn't I secure that for longer when I was so dumb and naive? Is that kind of what you wanted me to say about that?
Well, also, I know like some places they do like the old rule of thumb, like 8 to 10% of your sales for lease. Did you have like
I don't have any. I
potential
didn't have any of that.
predictions and stuff like on how much you were going to spend?
No, I didn't have any of that. It was just a straight lease. I'm only responsible for increases in property taxes, insurance, that sort of thing, and everything that I put into the building. All the build out was at my expense, not with no compensation.
Just one last question on the lease. If you had to do it over, would you have hired a lawyer and somebody that maybe would have negotiated some more favorable terms?
Probably, probably I would have done that. Just to protect my interests a little bit better, or at least that's one of those things that before I was really comfortable about asking lots of questions about. I did have a friend that had a business that came with me to that negotiation that day. At least got by the time it was all said and done, I got 1 month free, so that was better than what I would have got by myself.
Thank you.
Ken, out of curiosity, what was like when you kind of really decided to start doing this and found your lease to opening and actually receiving customers? What was kind of like your turnaround time for all that?
So I got the lease, started in September of 2017. We opened in April of 2018. I was ready to open, or I thought I was ready to open in January of 2018, but we ran into problems with the city, and I had to have some architectural drawings done, and I had to have some plumbing and electrical schematics done, and that all this takes a lot of time. And so basically those months we were just kind of sitting and waiting um, for permits to be given and things to go forward before we could finish everything. Um, so it was those 6 or 8 months, um, and then we opened in April. I think that also the biggest thing about the opening and what changed after that would be that your family and friends and everyone that's just that was already curious, they all come the first month, but then that second month you realize that you have to find real customers and then you're just like, oh crap, I better get on the ball and you know social media and just trying to do everything you can possibly do to get your name out there.
And you kind of sort of touched on what another question mine was going to be is through the process, are there certain things like in regards to the city, like for permitting and things that you now know, like, for me going in, like if I think it's going to take 30 days, like are there certain ones that you're like, oh, it's going to take a lot longer that you could kind of touch on?
I would just say just be prepared for it to take twice as long as you think it's going to take, so that you'll be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't. Um, it just depends on which type of thing you're trying to get, because they all move at different speeds. And then, if you have to go back, and redo something that wasn't permitted, then it's gonna take twice that long.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kent, I have another question for you.
Okay.
In terms of, thinking about COVID and how that's affected your business, if you were starting, now or post-COVID, what do you think would be the differences in how you would approach the business?
We definitely would have, post COVID, we would definitely, one thing I didn't mention is, we didn't really have an online way to order or that sort of thing before. That's something that we instituted early on in COVID. And that's made a big difference just in the amount of sales we do, to go type situation. I guess I would say if you're going in this type of business is just to, consider all those things, consider, outside space, and consider providing curbside service, all the things that we've become accustomed to in the last year, things that we didn't do as much before. I think that would be the thing that I would really look at. People don't really want to call and order, they're used to using their phones and being able to do that. So I think that was a big game change for us too, is just, making things available through our website and that sort of thing. Does that kind of touch on what you were asking?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Other questions, folks? Kent is a wealth of knowledge, I promise. He's got all the answers.
Well,
Hardly.
Ken, I'm really fascinated with you because, to be completely honest, I'm kind of doing what you're doing. I started up a company and looking to open my first location downtown San Antonio, pretty much from start on my own.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference I will say is I have over 20 something years experience in the industry, right, and starting businesses for other people.
Right.
So, I mean, even past this, I would definitely love to pick your brain more on maybe
Oh,
any
sure,
suggestions or guidelines and things that you've learned to navigate doing it pretty much on your own and things like that.
Right.
But so it's actually very fascinating to me because, through the process, I have to be honest, it's been very discouraging because it seems like you have to almost be a millionaire these days to open up a business.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, and that, like I said, everything is just so much. It does feel like it. That's what I felt like once I was deep in it. was I was like, how does anybody do this? Like, how does, I just don't understand how, you know, who has the money to do this without, completely sinking yourself. Um, and I agree with you 100%. And I would love to talk to you more about stuff as well.
Yeah. And then when you started, I assume you're there almost all the time, or were you
Yep.
were you a firm believer that like you're going to be there as much as possible, but you also scheduled for you to have a couple of light days so it didn't like overwhelm you or wear you out?
Unfortunately, until just recently, I didn't have that luxury. Um, Ryan can tell you that I don't know that Ryan's ever been here that I'm not here. I try to be here. I mean, I'm here all the time. It's just, I'm a little obsessed. Luckily, I don't have a family or anyone that cares about me, except for my dog. She misses me, but other than that, um, I'm basically here every waking moment except for sleeping and showering. But just recently, I've finally been able to be in a position where I could hire some help and have a couple of light days, like you said. And I would also say that that's so important because I felt like I was going crazy there for a little bit. But you figure out ways to work through that.
And any particular stuff that you found through being open, like that you recommend, like if we don't have plan to do, for example, entertain some form of entertainment
Mhm.
or anything along those lines that you recommend, like thinking about adding to the business because it actually makes a big difference as far as customer appeal? Is there
Yeah,
anything in particular
yeah.
that you?
I would say that I was never like a huge. I didn't search out live music before, but I would just say it's a thing that people love, and people are, especially now after being locked up for a year, people are hungry for something that's not on Netflix. So they're just like to see anything live and people doing, something they love. People are excited to see that. I would just encourage, supporting that community as well in any way you're able to. And people like, they like it in all forms.
And do you guys do any sort of customer like rewards programs of any kind yet, or have you ever thought about doing something like that? Like,
Not so much. We haven't done that yet. It's something I've thought about, but it's just not something that we haven't really explored too much yet.
gotcha. And so I assume you're still leasing. Would you consider, if you had the opportunity, to try and purchase like a building to start out by chance, or
100%,
are you still
100%,
100%?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you have the opportunity and the funds to own the property, 100%.
Okay. Awesome. And I'm just gonna, I keep asking all the questions,
It's
but
all right.
so also now on the business aspect, you're new to this in the sense, are there anything in particular, it's like when it comes to, at the end of your first year or whatever, and you did your taxes and things, are there anything in particular that you wish like, oh wow, I should have really kept a better track of this? Is there anything in particular like that you recommend?
Everything.
Okay.
I mean, if you are not good at paperwork and keeping track of all those things, find somebody who is, because I'm not. This is not my thing, and I'm only just now, really able to start looking at where everything's going and that sort of thing. Like I said, I was just so focused on just getting things going that I kind of let that slide. And it's so much harder to go back and try and organize it later than if you just start off with all your ducks in a row.
Gotcha. And are there any things that you offer like your employees, whether it's like a free meal or incentive or anything like that, that you found actually, really work well with employees for, they're
They
happy.
get a free meal during their shift, and free sodas and that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Kate, you mentioned in the beginning you decided to do food and you just kind of used you designed your menu based on what kitchen equipment you had. Do you find yourself still doing that? Have you updated your kitchen? Like, how do you approach your menu now?
So yes, we have continued to do that. Up until, we've done that all along. Everything, and it's really always been taking a long time for us to come out with new things for the menu, because we may have this great idea, but we may not be able to figure out a way to prepare it in the ways we have. That's been really, really hard. Thankfully, through a strange series of events, I mentioned the little building, the little ice house on the corner earlier. I'm actually working together now with the owner of that property, who is restoring that building, and it's going to be our new kitchen. We're going to be moving our kitchen, well, just actually having a real kitchen for our first time, within the next 2 to 3 months, into that building, and we'll actually be able to do things based on what we really want to do versus based on what tiny equipment we have. So yeah, that's definitely something that we need to change, and that decision was based on a lot on COVID, and also just the expansion outside. Now we had, as I said earlier, we have room for close to 200 people now, and to run everything through a little tiny oven and do that sort of prep and things in that space just aren't working anymore, and have started to create actual problems for us and headaches. So luckily we're able to, I'm going to be signing another lease for that building next door, and we'll have a full kitchen with all the equipment we need to do basically anything we want and do it in-house.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, really excited about that.
That's congratulations. That's really cool.
Thanks.
What would you recommend if you only had, a small budget? What would be your big things? Like, what would you stress to spend money on?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say that, just depending on what sort of business, I would say, the equipment is definitely what you need to have. Your point of sale system, you need to make sure that that's taken care of, because it's going to save you lots of problems later. I would say all the aesthetic things, if you can just have a general idea of what you want your aesthetic to be, that needs to be low on the priority list, because you can always finish that later. And people love that. A bartender friend told me, but right when I was doing all this, he told me, whatever you do, don't finish the place before people start coming. And I was like, what does he mean by that? But of course, I didn't have the money to finish the place the way I wanted it before people started coming. And that's just something that people expect now when they come, is that something's going to be different, and that we've added something. And if they bring somebody with them, they love to tell people about what used to be where and what's been added. And I would just say let the look not take up all your money. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is just spending all the money on the build out versus the actual tools of whatever it is you're doing.
You mentioned your point of sale system. I know, I guess it's a little bit different for a bar than it would be for a restaurant, but do y'all do any kind of customer retention software through your POS system, or?
We have the ability to do that. Again, it's one of those things that I haven't explored that much. I didn't really have time before. But now as I've finally hired some help, it's something that I'm looking into exploring a little bit further.
Cool, right on. Thank you, man.
And Kent, I have another question. So one of the things that I've always really enjoyed about the Dakota is not actually necessarily at the Dakota, but it's online and how you promote yourself through social media. And I'm assuming that you hired an extravagant team to help you do that, right? Like,
No, not at all. That's what I do late at night when I should be sleeping. I do all of that, and it's just it's a constant thing. Whenever I always feel bad because I feel like people think I'm just on my phone all the time, but that's what I'm doing. I'm creating flyers and trying to get stuff out on social media, um, just to have a presence. And that's something also that I tried to, during COVID, I tried to double down on because I noticed how many places just kind of fell off the radar. And I was like, nope, they're not going to forget us. They're not going to forget us. I'm going to be on there every day. They need to know we're here. So, yeah, I mean, that's it's so important. And I mean, yeah, I mean, that's I use an Adobe product that I do all through my phone and just make flyers all the time to put on online. I did try and hire someone to do that for me for a short time, um, but it wasn't me. It wasn't. I didn't have. I could tell them. I could tell her what I didn't like, but it was really hard for me to convey to her what I did like and how I wanted it to feel, because people would ask me, they'd be like, "What's wrong with your social media? It's not the same anymore." And it was just because it was somebody else trying to do, I guess, trying to be my voice. I don't know. I just feel like it's to me, it's just very personal. This whole thing is just so personal to me, um, that it's just it's something that I enjoy doing, and something that that I think makes the business really personal.
awesome. Thank you. Other questions, folks? Can you talk a little bit about the collaborations that you do, and also the stuff that you do in the community, like, and if at all that's helped your business? Like, for example, the Fifth Friday block cleanup,
Hmm.
or I know that you do. Is it an arts fair, or I mean not an arts fair,
Yeah,
but your vendors come out and do stuff, and just what does that
right.
do for you?
So we, I mean, and just being part of the community, we tried to, forge relationships there with different groups. Um, Pre-COVID, we did a monthly block cleanup, um, where we would just went block by block, slowly down Hackberry Street, and just cleaned up the sidewalks and pulled weeds and that sort of thing. Um, we haven't done that since COVID started, obviously, because it became a problem. But we were in the process of turning that into something community wide. Um, I got together with. We had started doing a thing on Fifth Fridays, which may sound strange to some people, but there's only 4 Fifth Fridays in a year. So I felt like it was something that I could commit to myself, and trying to have a big event where we had vendors and music, and just try to create kind of like a block party type thing together. Um, about a year in, I found out that we weren't the only people on the East Side doing a Fifth Friday, but the Carver Cultural Arts Center was also doing a Fifth Friday. So I reached out to their director, and we met, with another group, which is Caliente Hot Glass, that does glass blowing classes and fine art glass work, also on Hackberry Street. And we partnered together to try and start this Fifth Friday um, community project, which has been very challenging during COVID. We've done online versions of it. If you go onto our Facebook page, Fifth Friday East Side, on Facebook, you can see all the Fifth Fridays that we've done during COVID, um, which have been, we feel, successful just because they exist at all. But the idea moving forward with that is that we will blend in the cleanup and the community service projects with the Fifth Friday projects. So those months that have a Fifth Friday, we will do community service projects throughout that month, and then the party at the end will kind of be in recognition of those efforts. So it's just, it's another thing to reach out into the community, and I think that it's definitely helped, because people know that you care about where you are, and that's invaluable. Um, Also, just through supporting, like I said, the musicians, that's been a great thing. Just knowing that we support their efforts. We also do art. We do art shows, so we switch out our paintings inside. Pre-COVID, we did it every 3 months, and we're just starting that back again now, where we have a different artist featured, and through their network of people, it's been really really great to just expand through those efforts. Um, so I think it's been a great thing. And the other thing, is kind of touching on all that, is that we do a lot of the social media stuff, like you said earlier. I don't do a lot of advertising. To me, it's just, I mean, it may also be go back to my being naive. Um, but if I can't see you, I don't feel like I've really got you. So I would a lot rather, you know, um, invite people to our space, or make donations to, um, make donations of food or drink to a nonprofit, or something that wants to hold an event, that's actually bringing people here. I'd rather, spend those dollars that way than just randomly posting something in a printed material and hope that somebody sees it and likes it. Um, Although, I mean, online is doing that. Online is doing that enough, I think, to get that end covered. But I feel like if somebody's here, they're going to come back. I mean, I feel like the place at this point, um, kind of sells itself because of what we've been able to create. Did that answer that?
Yeah, I think so. Another thing that I always like bringing this up too, just because it's just such a unique take on doing something. And I know the last time we talked about it, you brought it up with new information, almost the unsolved mysteries update segment, which was when you started, you offered beer in a non-traditional way, specifically Bud Light. You didn't offer it. You didn't offer it in the I get, what is it, the 12? I guess the 12 ounce.
12-ounce bottles, yes.
Yeah, and that's such a different thing, right? And it seemed to stick, and I love the thought behind it. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about just those like seemingly minor elements. Yeah,
the Bud Light
exactly.
dilemma.
Yeah.
It's something that we keep going through over and over, because I keep going back to it. So initially, what we tried to do, I mean, aside from just the Bud Light thing, which I'll explain in just a minute, was that in order to try and kind of equalize the different beers, we tried to have the nicest version of the cheap beers and the cheapest version of the nice beers, if that makes any sense, so that they kind of became equal, so that possibly people in the neighborhood would try something that maybe they hadn't had an opportunity before or hadn't been exposed to before, and it wouldn't be at a price that was that different from something that they were used to. But in order to do that, I felt like we had one of the guys that I hired early on, and we started with, we had a whole discussion about, when this was a convenience store, the number one thing they sold was Bud Light, and I mean, basically that's all the cooler had in it. And we said, well, if we're gonna move forward like that, I think we shouldn't sell Bud Light. We're not gonna sell Bud Light in bottles. We'll have it on draft, but we won't sell it in bottles. Okay, so we agreed on that. That's what we're gonna do. And then I couldn't believe it, but within the first 6 months, we had, I won't call them incidents, but we had at least 3 or 4 times when people came in and wanted a Bud Light bottle and we didn't have it, and they either cussed the bartender out or were just so pissed that they left, which just further proved the point of why we shouldn't have it. Which I couldn't believe it. It was just like shocking. Like it was shocking that people would get that upset over something that we had. We just didn't have it in the vessel that they requested it in. And so, yeah, so that was something that we kept up for a long time. After COVID, we didn't have draft beer for a long time because of just um, it wasn't financially a way to do that because of how long we had to hold the beer. And so we brought back Bud Light for a little while. And things kind of got a little rough for a couple of weeks. So it was just crazy. Like it was just totally crazy. And so we got rid of it again, but we brought it back in mini bottles. So we had it in 7-ounce bottles, but not 12-ounce bottles. And so we've run with that for the last year, more or less the last year, or the last 8 months. And the last 2 weeks, we've had big bottles again. And so far, it's been okay. But I will not hesitate to yank them again. It's just crazy that something like that could change a business so quickly. Like it just got a little rough around the edges a few times.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Other questions, folks? Don't be afraid.
I promise it's not me that's backing up. It's trash day. Sorry.
When you were looking at your menu, did you have you mentioned that as part of your, I think, license, you had to sell a certain amount of food. Was it like you had to hit 51%? And did you ever get close to not making that target?
I have yet to make that target. But they do give you kind of like a grace period the first few years you open, just in realization that you have to build that business. And then if you don't, upon renewing your license the third time, then I had to post a bond for the second license, and then I'll either be required to do that or search out a different license if this next time we're not meeting that requirement.
I was trying to look online to see your menu. Is that menu the one with brisket and pizzas? Is that
Yep,
the right
that's
restaurant?
the one.
Okay. So with that brisket, how do you cook that? You mentioned you had a conveyor oven, but how do you do that?
Right. So the brisket, currently we're outsourcing it, and we're bringing it in from a company in Austin. Once we get moved to our new kitchen, we'll be able to smoke that in-house. We bring it in, we slice it. It's all sliced or chopped and ready to go, and then it's run through the oven and brought to temperature.
Gotcha.
Yeah, everything we have, not being in the food service industry, I just have this fear of killing people with food. So I'm extremely careful with, I'm very uncomfortable with keeping things at temp. So everything goes from cold to hot. I just don't, this is something that makes me uncomfortable. So that's how we treat everything. We don't keep anything like a temperature in a hot well or anything like that.
Gotcha.
We do also have an induction burner and things we use for things as well.
So Kent, another area that I think is a differentiator for what you do is the salad, which you really wouldn't put a whole lot, you wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into a bar salad necessarily. I feel like I'm a bar salad aficionado, having grown up in old man bars, my dad. But yours is completely different, but even different so much so just because of where you are. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about just when you kind of brought it up in terms of keeping the options to be available to folks that live in the neighborhood, but even something like that can be such an interesting shift for folks.
Yeah, so the salads came out of the requirement to have a side. I mentioned in the beginning that you had to have 10 items with sides, and the easiest sides we could think of were salads and chips. And that's how that happened. We wanted something that we would be able to put on a plate that we didn't require much prep. And again, just went back to what we would eat at home and what's delicious, and that's how that salad came to be. And everybody loves a salad. Everybody eats it. We hardly ever see salads thrown away, which is crazy. Particularly, like you said, just it's not something that would be normal at a bar or necessarily in this area.
And specifically, the East Side's not necessarily known for having the greatest of healthy food or anything like that.
Right.
How much did that factor into the ability to offer something like that?
To be real honest, it was solely done out of necessity. There wasn't a lot of thought put into that in that regard.
Yeah, no sweat. And then, so now your business is sort of on there's a turn, right? The market is shifting back.
The market has shifted since the freeze. We've been busier than we've ever been, which has been crazy. We're still enforcing all of our health protocols and everything that we did during COVID and prior to COVID. COVID has added a bunch of things that you would normally do in a restaurant anyway. Just upped that a little bit, which we continue to do. We're still doing masks, and we still have the table space, and we still have all those things in place. But we're still doing, like I said, we have all the space outside now, so we're able to hold so many more people. Which just the holding more people in and of itself has changed the business. Because it seems like it's not busy. It's busier than our busiest days would be when we were only open inside. It's just completely changed the way everything works.
And so where do you think, or where do you foresee the evolution of the Dakota, or, what does the outlook look like now that we're sort of on hopefully the other end of COVID?
Well, hopefully that when we, get this new kitchen open, we'll be able to, really provide even better food and even better quality and everything done in house and that sort of thing. And that's something that we're really excited about. Also, with that new building, you'll be able to have a drive-up area where you'll be able to do curbside service without having to come into the bar to pick up food or to pick up beer or wine or anything like that. You'll just be able to drive up and either someone bring it out to you or step inside and grab it. There'll be a counter space available. You won't be able to sit in there, but it'll be a place that you can pick up things. And I think that's going to be a game-changing thing for us. And should God forbid we go through COVID again, I feel like we'll be way more prepared for that type of situation. I don't feel like any monies that I've spent during COVID to improve the building or improve the space or outdoor furniture, I don't think anything was misspent because it's what set us up for now, which is like I said, it's a completely different business than I had a year ago. So I feel like you know, COVID in some ways moved us forward faster than we would have otherwise, just by forcing us to do a lot of uncomfortable things that you kind of put on the back burner.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, folks, is last chance for questions. Because I'm kind of running out of my, I'm running out of all the little snippets of knowledge I remember about Kent starting up. So if you have any more, feel free to unmute again. Many of y'all are at that early stage, and there's no point in being timid, even if you feel like it's a dumb question. Someone else is probably thinking about it.
I don't have another question. I'm just want to thank you, Kent, for being so honest. Because a lot of times people make it either rainbows and sunshine or like a sunny trip through hell. So
it's both. It's both.
Right.
depends on what day.
I appreciate your honesty and all of this and not sugarcoating it and everything. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, guys. Well, Kent, thank you so much for giving us your time today. As always, I super appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story. I love that you're still willing to give us all the scars that are maybe somewhat still fresh. Keep getting
they're fresh. They're real fresh.
But it means a lot, especially to the beginning stages of folks that are starting up. So, just you're one of my favorite people in the food industry. So I'm just super excited to have you.
Well, I appreciate that, Ryan. And anybody that wants to talk about stuff, stop by the Dakota. I'm usually always here, and there's nothing I like to talk about more than this business. So I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah. Did you have hobbies before the business?
I don't remember. I don't remember the before times very well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ken. Thank you all for participating today in today's session, and we will be back on Monday, same time. So everyone have a great day, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Or as Ken said, go stop by the Dakota. I guarantee you'll have a great time. I always have a great time. So
we're having I'm going to put a little plug in if you don't mind, Ryan.
Yeah, of course.
We're having our big, our third anniversary. Since we didn't get to have a second anniversary, we're having our third anniversary on the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th of April, which would have been the first week of Fiesta, and nobody gets a Fiesta, so you might as well come here. So on Saturday and Sunday, we'll have live music from 1 p.m. till 10 p.m. Both days. So come check out all the bands that have played here multiple times over the last 3 years. Will be back for that, and all the artists that have shown their work over the last 3 years will also have their artwork up and for sale and that sort of thing as well.
Awesome, amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Kent. I hope to be out there during that event, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.